Welcome everybody to preparing for 2021 as an independent artist. For everyone who doesn't know me, which is probably a lot of people, my name is Carey. I'm an artist manager, have been doing this for 15 years. I manage bands such as the Rubens, Earthboy, Mia Ray, a few others. I would like to, before we get into it all, acknowledge that I'm on Duck and Jong land and pay my respect to elders past and present, and extend a warm welcome to any First Nations people as part of the program and on the Zoom call today. And welcome. Warmly welcome to everybody. I'd love to introduce you to our fabulous speakers today. A lot of respect. I've got a lot of respect for these people, and I'm really excited to dig in and pick their brains on how they go about their day-to-day business. I'd love to introduce you to Al Burns, Amy Laidlaw, and Michael Parisi.
Guys.
You're all here today as you are pursuing a career in the music industry. You're independent artists, self-managing or managing other acts. And we really just want to really unpack that and try and help steer a conversation around the preparation and what 2021 can look like. It's obviously been a tumultuous year for not only the whole world, but our industry in particular. First one to go down, last to get back up. And we're on the road to recovery, feeling optimistic. Now's the time to get out the big planning book and start consolidating what hypothetically next year could look like. And we're going to try and we'll use the panelists to really see how they go about it from their day-to-day and with their artists. But before we got into it all, we would like to just get maybe a bit of an understanding from participants. I'm going to ask for 5 volunteers just to kind of introduce yourself, give us a bit of a lay of the land on where you're at in your career. Top 3 things that you kind of want to get out of today. Just within the hour we really want to hit the nail on the head and give you as much information which is tailored to what you want to do. So if I could get someone either do a thumbs up or just raise your hand and you can unmute yourself, but I'd love 5 people just to quickly, give a 30-second to 60-second rundown. Don't be shy. Okay, we've got Desmond.
Yo guys, hey, yeah, so yeah, I just want to know, like, obviously with the year that's been going forward into the future, what are the sort of major things you guys have learned, and where do you see like the music industry as artists or emerging artists, or even like established artists, sort of how do they get the most out of this new post-COVID world?
Okay, cool. Well, Desmond, we're gonna take notes, and we're gonna ask 4 other people, and then we're gonna kind of steer this into a really kind of focused discussion. So we'll come back and address that in a larger group. Can I get another volunteer, please? Yeah, Benny Allen.
G'day. I'm an up-and-comer in the country music side of things, bit of alt country as well as, sort of heading into the traditional side as well, and a bit of contemporary sort of stuff. But doing okay with what I've been able to release this year. But my big thing, going forward is probably trying to work out how we're going to be able to make money performing in front of people when we've got restricted capacities, we've got venues that don't necessarily want to work with you at the moment because they're just trying to work out how they're going to get their heads above water. So I guess from my side it's more thinking about in a local capacity how we're going to tour and how we're going to try and make money performing in front of people.
Oh, that's fine, Ben. Yeah, we've got some notes here to talk more broadly about developing income streams outside of touring. So we'll come back to the panel in a bit. Maybe I'll just ask for 1 more volunteer because I feel like we've got a bit of rhythm here and we can get underway. Yes, we have, sorry, I don't know how to say your name. I don't want to.
Anjali.
Anjali, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, and hello everyone. Just to give you a little background, I'm in a 3-piece band in Melbourne, and yeah, we're gearing up for our debut album release, hopefully in April. We're looking at. We've had to keep pushing it back, but I just kind of wanted to know, like timeline wise, like what you guys kind of recommend. We're looking at doing kind of a 3-stop kind of Victorian tour, contemplating East Coast, like going up as far as Wollongong. That's kind of it. And then just, yeah, marketing timeline wise, kind of, if that makes sense.
Yep, sure. And unless anyone else wants to volunteer, just to say something, otherwise we'll just get straight into it, just to maximise our time. So I'm going to kickstart by going to our trusty panel who've got experience here, and obviously they've also been through a pretty tough year and probably learned a whole lot along the way too. I guess it'd be just to kind of start, like broadly, we're going to be in a very transitional year in 2021 with the industry coming back together. But I think before you guys all jumped on, we're just really kind of talking about the notion that good songs, good product is a really good place to kind of kickstart. You can have the best plan in the world, but without really great product, you know, it can kind of be rendered useless in some ways. So we want to really take it back to the art form and songs. So I'm going to throw to you just on maybe some experience that you've had in those early stages of one of your artist career, and how you go about making sure that what you're taking to market is as good as it can be before you consider a broad plan.
Yeah, I think, hey everyone, I think what we were just talking about was that it's really enjoyable to have these chats about plans and the way the industry works, and to try and get the head around it. And I think that you can be either have a great manager or be a great self-manager and do a wonderful job of that side, and it makes a huge difference. And sometimes that can be really underrated in terms of how important it is just to have your ducks in a row and be organised and have a clear plan. But I think it's also just so important to kind of weight the priorities in favour of songs and production, and the like very core elements of like the aesthetic, videos, photos, just the key things that you're presenting, and just to never lose sight that you could be in the most incredible self-manager or have the most incredible team around you. And a lot of people do have huge teams around them, and it can still not move the needle because the music at the heart of it is just not connecting. And, you know, this is something that Luke and I spoke about a bunch, is just like the importance of self-assessing and working out whether your music is connecting in an organic way. And if it does, then the world is wide open. And if it doesn't, then you could have 100 people in your team and it probably won't change things. And I think that's just super important to keep in mind, to not have it like, it's not a reason not to dig into all this planning and the kind of core elements of how we release music. But I think it's still key that is the number one focus point to always come back to.
Michael, I'd like to throw to you, mate. Yeah, because I know you've got a lot of experience in developing, and you know, it's a lot of competitive lanes out there at the moment. Like, for as well as Vera Blue's done, there's probably, you know, a lot of people in that lane that are trying to pick through. And obviously, she stood out. What's your thought process on that?
Well, I mean, with someone like Celia, we took 2 years of strong, you know, artist development before we, you know, put into a studio, and she hated me for 2 years because I made her go back into, you know, the songwriting and co-writing and making sure that we had something that was actually, you know, competitive, not just domestically, internationally. That's the name game, and I think it's sometimes got to be, you know, you've got to show a lot of tough love to your artists, you know, and making sure they're working with the right people, the right producers. The creative process can take a long time, and artists forget that sometimes. And they think, you know, it's easy to write a song and then put it out the next week. It doesn't work that way. So it's having the patience and having the nous and having artists. I love working with artists who have a clear vision for themselves too, because that helps me help them, if that makes sense. And having done A&R or an artist development for near on 30 years, it's no coincidence that the acts that have worked are the ones that have worked out their sound and their songs and their own vision early on. Yes, at least they develop, but it's very important that, you know, the creative process always comes first for me. You know, we can talk about plans, 1 year plan, 2 year plans, 3 year plans, but the creativity part of what we're doing is crucial. You don't get that right, there's no point having a plan.
So Michael, with that process, it's with all your experience in that 30 years, like what are the kind of like, if you're an artist that struggles to articulate a vision, has trouble really pinpointing references on where they want to take themselves creatively, because it doesn't come naturally to a lot of artists, but some it does. So what are some ways that you can kind of help them unearth that?
Well, those are people like Alastair and Amy, and people, and I come in. We, our role is to find people they can work with and help them find that vision. Most of them have a clear vision as to what they want to do, but our role is to mentor and to nurture and to make sure they're working with the right people every step of the way. Find the right producers, find the right co-writers, find the right opportunities in general. It's kind of like, it's like a parenting role, to be frank. Being a manager or being an A&R person, because that's what you do. You're nurturing, young, fresh talent to the point of release.
Sure, thank you. Amy, what about yourself and your experience with your roster?
Yeah, I think just on Michael's point about, we were talking about before, just about pushing yourself and challenging yourself to be out of your comfort zone. And I think moving into next year, it's a good time to do that, just to help develop that craft if that's not an area that you feel really confident in. That might be, approaching someone to co-write. It might be helping or getting started building your team. But just really putting yourself out of your comfort zone and asking for guidance and for help. If you don't have a manager, there are people that you can ask, and you can start building those relationships now to get some of that feedback.
Now, thanks, Amy, what's your kind of take on, like, if you are an independent artist and your network isn't that big, what's just some real ways you can, start looking at ways on how to collaborate, how to get that kind of objective opinion to really nurture that kind of vision that it's in your head, but you don't know how to really navigate yet?
I think it's about building community and surrounding yourself with people that can be honest and are ambitious as you are, and who kind of inspire you and challenge you, even if sometimes that means that it's frustrating to see the great songs they're writing or some of their successes that can inspire you to try and be better. And I guess I've been in worlds from early on where they're just purely kind of encouraging and supportive, and then I've been in worlds where maybe they're a bit like toxically competitive. And I think it's finding a nice balance where it's like you've got people around you that are like saying, that one's not a great tune, and who are willing to go there, but likewise who, when you do nail it, are willing to be like, that's amazing, and really back you. And I think finding that balance is super important. And yeah, most like all of my roster have really strong core communities, and while they turn to me sometimes they don't care what like their manager or what their label think. They're more relying on their kind of core creative community to build from, and if they have their respect, then that's kind of their guide point for where to move forward.
Really good point. Is I guess a good kind of like tangent to move the conversation along in a linear way is I guess if artists are concentrating on their craft, they're articulating their vision to either a manager or someone else, in a third party sense, then I guess it's in terms of how you kind of kickstart from having what you think is a good product to then developing a plan. Do you guys sit down with your artists and really work out what the goals are to drive that plan forward and to map it out? Is that how you guys commence the process? Amy, I'll start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really about goal setting, but also you might have already done that, and so you're referring back to your goals that you've already set. So it's a continual checking in process of where you're at, and because goal setting is just a plan, it doesn't always work out that way, but you need to have a plan in order to start achieving something. So being open to having that evolve as time goes on, but yeah, definitely setting those early goals on what you want for your career, what your values are, who are the people that you want to be surrounding yourself with, as in if you're building your team, what are the qualities in those people that you want to have around you, like what's really important to you, because if you're going to be in this industry for a long time, you want to have people around you that you can trust, and when they have a differing opinion, like Al said, maybe his artists don't always take that on board, you can trust that opinion, and maybe it'll help you second guess something and think about it a bit differently.
Michael, do you have anything else to add? When you had Celia going through 2 years of artist development and she was frustrated at you, at what point did you say, yep, now's the time, we've got what we need, let's plan?
Well, let me preface what I'm about to say by saying two things. I mean, when we sit down with an artist, you know, there are two things I like to talk about. One is expectations. That's very, very important. And secondly is like, what do you want to finish with? We kind of begin with an end in mind, if that makes sense. So for say someone like Celia, her expectations were, I want to get a US record deal. She was very clear on that. You know, I want to travel the US. I want to play Coachella. And so we kind of started there and worked our way backwards. And I know it sounds weird, but it was stepping stones to get to where she wanted to go. They were her expectations. And then you've got other acts I work with who just are quite happy to be sustainable touring acts and don't care about the American record deal and don't care about getting signed. So it's important that you understand your artist's needs and wants very early on so you can help them get there. But they're the two things I talk about all the time. What are your expectations and what do you want to achieve? You know, what's the end of this first process of your career, or first part of your career? Very important question.
Yeah. Is that something that you consistently monitor and reflect on in the goalposts?
Always. We do it all the time. And then we sit down at the end of each year and go, all right, what did we achieve what we set out to achieve in this last 12 months? And, you know, sometimes, you know, plans do change for various reasons, e.g. COVID. So you have to be adaptable as well, but it's important to have some kind of blueprint there that you can follow. So, you know, having a plan is very important, but making sure that you're having, you know, the music out at the right time is very important. There's so many different factors going into a successful artist career or not successful artist career, as the case may be.
Yeah. What about yourself with Julia, and when you guys first met and took her on as management, and you know, with her international focus, where do those conversations go when you feel like products there, we feel really confident about taking this to market? How do you, what are you guys talking about in those initial first meetings?
I'm like Michael was saying, I'm such a big fan of just laying out that big vision, and then that informs everything. And if then there are steps along the way that an artist wants to take that don't align with what they're trying to work towards, then you've got kind of you've got like a way into that conversation. Like, I don't know, why do you want to release this album if you're trying to be this? You know, like, this doesn't line up with your future goals at all. And so I love kind of having that conversation and figuring it out. And if we both sort of can see it happening, then I think, you know, we're onto something. And the unique thing about the starting point with Julia was that I think I had to kind of spot it in her, but she kind of wasn't yet confident enough to lay out that dream. You know, when I first asked her, she was like, what are you even talking about? Like that's way too big a question to ask me. And it took quite a while for her to kind of build that belief. And so it did have to kind of start a bit with me being like, we can totally do this. And just seeing in her this like hunger for it, but she just had to get to the point where she could like fully, where she was willing to articulate it. But I could tell that it was there, like, and she backed herself. She even writes about it in like her first album. There's like a line like, will I be great? Like, and I'm pretty sure that's like genuinely autobiographical, that she was asking that question. And, you know, maybe because she could recognize that she's amazing. So like, so yeah, I think that's an interesting scenario that was a little bit different with, say, like a Marlon, where, you know, we were both like, this is what we can see, and we could sort of picture it, because he had already had quite a few years of feedback and like positive reinforcement to kind of maybe believe a bit more. Yep. And so those are interesting moments, but I think it's like trying to drill into the conversation for long enough that you can sort of spot the real hopes and dreams of an artist. And for all of you on the call, like to be willing to sort of dig into that for yourself and be like, really, if I'm honest about it, what do I really want to achieve? What are my true dreams, and what will I work towards? And not kind of filter it too much with like, oh, but that's silly and maybe I can't do it. You know, just actually like lay it out in the sort of most bold fashion and what you really would want to go for. And then kind of go, okay, well, since that's my goal, like, what does it take to then get there? And that's when you need to bring in advice and guidance to kind of understand the steps. and where you need to look at the music, and are you kind of, is it strong enough, and start sort of going through and just like working out what it's going to take to get there. But that first goal is the thing that, like, and that vision for where you want to be is the core starting point.
Nice one. Now I'm going to just pause there for 2 seconds for anyone who's joined us, because we've had about another 15 people since we kicked off. We've just dived into the initial discussion around, before you even start looking at a plan, the notion of just having great product, concentrating on the songs, collaboration, having objective third party advice on, is the music going to go well in the marketplace, and then kind of unpacking the next steps of articulating a vision to your team, and then building a plan off that. So and I should remind everyone that we are recording this session, just as a heads up. Amy, I'd like to kind of just once again move in that linear form of going, those goals are set, the plan is starting to, you build out a plan. How long are you spending on that process? Is it a coffee meeting? Are you deliberating it? Does it go through the filter of many people within the team that you've built? I just would like to start at that level.
Yeah. Just before I get into that, I just wanted to say with Al and Michael, what they've said, like definitely stating that vision and like what that end goal is, like saying it out loud or writing it on paper is just a really powerful move for getting, I guess, that self-belief. So and repeating it, saying it out loud to people is a really good thing, just in itself. But I guess as far as how I go about those, that initial steps, I do it in an 1.5-hour session. I want it to be fresh, straight out of, I might give them a list of questions kind of before the meeting, and then it's an 1.5 hours, bam, get it out. I don't want them to think about it too much, but it's not always successful. And then part of that is obviously revisiting that and fleshing it out. So, but yeah, like I said, it's a constant returning back to it. I'd say probably at 6 months, I'd say. Yeah. Particularly in those developing stages, yeah.
What about yourself, Michael and Alan, how you approach that first initial planning stage? Is it, you got the spreadsheets out, have you got just a whiteboard, everyone's got their own style, but just more about the approach and the length that it takes you?
It depends on the artist, I think. With someone like, say, Vera Blue, who's got a team, it'd be a long, lengthy conversation with all the stakeholders in her business, which is the record label, the publisher, the agent, the management. We all get involved in the overall plan. But when you've got a developing act, it's usually just management, and we sit there. You can plot for hours, you can plot for days, you can plot for weeks. It just depends. Again, it all goes back to what you're trying to achieve. But planning, I do enjoy the process, because you kind of you get everything out you want to say, and it gives the artist the opportunity to actually, articulate exactly what they want to be, and planning again, as much as we'll say music is crucial to the whole process. Planning is very, very important once you have that product ready to go, and there's no real set criteria as to how you go about planning. It just depends on the artist, depends on the team around them, and depends on what you're trying to achieve.
Nice one. Yeah, recently the Rubens are moving into 4th album cycle, and kind of in a bit of a rhythm as a band, but you've got 5 people, 5 different personalities, different ideas. And we, as a kind of starting point of, okay, what's, we've kind of, it's almost like clockwork when you're onto your 4th record, but they're crucial albums given, career band and whatnot. So I kind of send them off a questionnaire that they individually answered, and we all talked about that in a forum. I think it was in COVID, so it was all on Zoom, but it was an opportunity where they're actually quite shy guys when it comes to that sort of thing. If we had have had a meeting and talked about it, it just wouldn't have worked, because they just would have fumbled across words and probably drank too many beers and not really talked about the actual focus of what it was. But I found that a really helpful exercise. Yeah, what about yourself with your approach and just about the process of planning?
Not particularly, it's not particularly formal. It's more just been kind of, yeah, we see this vision, we got it, and I'm like, I know what we're doing. We're doing it. and it's more been the real tricky things that where the artists have been very hands-on and involved is always about where their line in the sand is with the way that they're presenting and kind of, I guess, building their brand. And that's where, like, yeah, how they're presenting on socials, their photos, their videos, yeah, how they're speaking to people, what they're willing to do in terms of marketing and media, how they're going to tour. Like, it's often working out that stuff, because to me, a lot of the steps are not that mysterious. You know, you try and build a team that are passionate about the artist. The right agent is the one who will fight for them. The right label is kind of the same. Like, it's sort of finding all the people that are obsessed with them, like I am, and who have a bit of weight out in the world in terms of what they do, have some experience, and are willing to put some money behind it, and building that team. And then it's like the real challenges are just navigating the day in, day out of, like, are you going to do that festival? Are you going to do that support? You know, is that the right placement? You know, like, yeah, that media piece, and like, it's just an endless process of trying to sort of navigate. And the great thing that I love about kind of all of my artists, and Julie's a really interesting example, is like, she says no to, you know, 90+% of things. And she's always had a very firm kind of idea of how she's going to, like, roll out and what she will do and won't do. And sometimes it's frustrating because you work towards stuff, but it's like really great because you know, she's just built this really, like, formidable kind of like respect from her audience, because she's clearly, like, authentic in what she does, and everything aligns, and it's like unshakable. You can't pay her any amount of money that will, like, break that. And of course, some days as a manager, you're like, fuck. But it's like, it's so cool how much respect she has, like well, how much integrity she has. And
yeah, I guess as a manager too, it does give you a clear focus and parameters around areas and what you should be looking at, instead of like the endless, like, should, could, don't know. At least she's got that strong vision of what she wants to be.
Yeah, I think when you know the industry, like, the sort of steps forward are not that sort of mysterious. They're just hard when someone doesn't know what they want to be, where they want to go. As long as they can articulate that and you can figure it, you can sort of, yeah, paint that vision. You're like, cool, this will be the kind of label we want. This is the kind of agent. But we're not going to get the EDM agent at, like, United Talent if we've got a folk artist. You know, like, all those steps kind of, like, make sense from there, but they all come from that kind of that artist that has a clear identity. Yeah.
I've got a bit of a skeleton in the closet to admit. I watched the Shawn Mendes Netflix documentary the other day, and he has a manifestation diary that he writes, you know, what his goals are. So, you know, just passing on some tips from someone who's doing it large. I guess that's we're kind of like at the halfway point. We've got about 15 minutes to kind of steer a conversation further than this, and then we'll get into some real kind of question time. Just kind of picking up from the initial dialogue from the audience. The elephant in the room is that, you know, it's been a really tough year. We're going to be transitioning. It's really hard, even from a senior management level, to know, you know, necessary steps and navigating. I guess it'd be good to speak to the panel, just, you know, going head on with that kind of topic on how are you planning ahead with your current acts in a 2021 post-COVID environment?
Firstly, can I say that I think 2020, even though it's been a tough year, it's been a really interesting year for our artists becoming more creative and doing a lot more writing, a lot more recording, a lot more experimenting. So in that sense, it's been a successful year. The only thing we haven't been able to do, obviously, is tour. Next year, we're planning, like, you know, it's full steam ahead. Things may change, as you know. You know, I don't think there'll be much international travel based on what I'm hearing. So all the you know, the touring we had planned for Vera Blue and for Houseski and for Polish Club internationally is up in the air. But we still can focus on domestic. And I think from adversity, there comes opportunity. So, you know, if international acts can't come here and tour, and people are still putting on festivals and still putting on big shows, it gives more opportunity for our domestic artists. So I'm kind of buoyant about it and staying really positive about it. I think there will become more opportunities next year our way, domestic artists. I'm excited. Again, we are planning. We're planning tours. We're actually locking in shows. We're locking in venues. That may change, obviously, based on what may eventuate with this virus. If it does morph, or if it does, does continue. But we have to forge ahead. We can't. If we stop, what are we doing?
Love that energy, Michael. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Al, Amy, give us the 1-2 from you. How are you approaching this crucial time and the time that you have looking ahead for 2021?
You go, Amy.
Oh, sure. Yeah, look, obviously a lot of exporting stuff was put on hold till next year, which now has to be rescheduled probably for the following year. So just trying to keep that going and development happening there with regards to, maybe doing some online overseas festivals, approaching venues to play their live stream shows, that kind of thing. Those are all things that you can all be doing as well, even if you weren't planning to export before. But yeah, definitely looking at the domestic stuff and going into album release cycles as well. So some of that, obviously, like export activity takes a long time, long planning. So being able to divert attention back to the domestic audiences is actually a good thing. Although obviously we wouldn't have wanted it that way, but we'll build on it from there anyway.
Nice one. Now, what's your words of wisdom, mate? How are you approaching it all?
Well, I've had an interesting year with my artist Merck, and we were due to go to South by and Great Escape, and we released a song, and then we were going to kind of launch off that, and we had a bunch of labels that we were talking to, and that kind of stopped dead, and it was pretty demotivating for a few months there, and you look at it as being quite a kind of tough break for him, but ultimately, like that, all of those plans were pretty ambitious for him and financially quite risky, and I was going to be like trying to chip in as well, and the whole thing was kind of quite stressful. And what we've ended up doing is like pulling back. He's done a lot more production work, a bunch of film work, and we're kind of resetting. And he's also sort of been able to kind of put together some funding support that's come up with COVID. And now the new plan is to kind of focus around Australia and New Zealand more so in terms of traditional campaigns, because really, like, there's nothing in the way right now of doing a traditional album release in Australia and New Zealand unless the COVID situation goes backwards. And then in the rest of the world, because of that funding, we're still going to kind of try some PR radio push. But I think if anything, it's kind of been like a bit of a positive just to kind of pull back a bit and focus in the home territories where maybe it's a little bit more realistic to build something up. And for someone like me who's sometimes like a little bit too hungry to kind of make everything a global success story, it's almost kind of been a positive thing. And maybe we're going to do a release that suits Merck more in terms of where he's at. And so I think for most artists, it's quite rare you can just dive in and become a global artist straight out of the gate. And it's incredibly stressful financially, very hard to pull off. And it's a rare story, and it often takes like crazy decisions and managers funding things and all that kind of stuff. And so, I think that the thing of needing to kind of start a bit smaller, like maybe Australia, New Zealand, and try and really build something strong at home is not really a negative for almost, for most acts. And we're just fortunate with where things are sitting at that we can kind of follow fairly traditional models. We're not really having to kind of reinvent the wheel in Australia and New Zealand with a release in 2021 the way it's looking. We can kind of like, we've been a bit screwed this year for those things, but we can kind of go back into kind of familiar the models of release, and then maybe have a few extra things that have come through, like a stronger live stream environment and things that we can that can only add to the campaign. So, I don't think it's a completely different landscape here, but it certainly is a different landscape globally if you're trying to break out internationally from Australia.
Yeah, nice one now. Apologies in advance. Daddy Daycare is real in this house right now. And you might hear Bluey Paw Patrol. Apologies. Doing my best to cancel out the noise. But I'm interested to hear just on that. Like, I guess, you know, Desmond brought up a really good point about, you know, people at their level as well, of what, you know, what their focuses should be. Like, if there's a big focus on domestic acts, maybe there are more opportunities for emerging artists coming through. What are maybe some top line things that we could pass on just to kind of, you know, really sharpen the focus leading into 2021? Feel free to chime in, whoever's got ideas.
I think just, oh, sorry.
No,
I was just going to say, I think making yourself visible. So depending on where you're at, it might be just making sure those press shots and your video assets and all of that stuff is ready to go. And if it's not ready to go, spend that time now getting that developed. So then you can be in that conversation to get those opportunities for the domestic acts. So you may not have those things ready. So just getting all your ducks in a row. So then when festivals start kicking off again, you know, applications open, you've got all that ready to go.
Yeah, I think I said something really important earlier on about community and building a community around, you know, around your artists and stuff. I mean, next year with, you know, smaller venues are going to be reopening left, right, and centre. There's going to be a lot of acts wanting to work, a lot of acts going out and doing stuff. I think it's a good year for, you know, building relationships with the new community. You know, people that you've never seen before as a live act, and people that you've probably, you know, you want to work with potentially. I think it could be a very interesting year in rekindling, because one thing I did get out of this year in the industry was a sense of camaraderie. You know, we're all in the same boat, and, you know, we're all talking to, I was talking to people I haven't spoken to in 10 years this year, and we all sort of had a sense of like, you know, we have to, you know, we're going to fight as a family, because that's what we are essentially in the music industry. Yes, we're competitive. Yes, we can be arseholes, but it's about just like, you know, creating relationships, you know, maintaining that camaraderie. And I think with young acts, going out and seeing other acts of similar ilk, you know, creating little groups and creating some power amongst yourselves is very important, I think.
Yeah, supporting each other as well.
Yeah, that's supporting each other, and that's going to be very important next year, because we have to kind of like, it feels like we're almost rebuilding the live industry again. So having that sense of community, that kind of like camaraderie and that spirit is going to be very, very important next year for young acts.
Yeah, well, I mean, take away the three panelists and myself, there's 40 people on this Zoom call right now. You've probably all got different backgrounds. There might be some crossover. Like, it's a good place to start is right here.
Absolutely. Perfect place to start. That's what I'm getting at. Just like meet new people, you know, discover, and by meeting new people, you're going to find out about, you know, what they're doing, you know, with their careers, and how, what are their challenges, or, you know, what are the positives, what are the negatives. Create a sense of spirit and sense of community. It's very important.
Al, did you have anything further?
Just in terms of some of those questions about how we'll tour and how we'll make money, and the questions around timing, like, yeah, as I said just before, I think for the most part, it's not going to be too different as it currently stands. I think there's a room to kind of take advantage of it, of the kind of lower capacities in some cities, and make it a little bit easier to get momentum by having sold out shows. We've been watching a whole bunch of acts do that, where they've sold out 5 nights, and really they've sold out 1 night at the venue. And it's just smart, you know, smart management, or like, you know, just making the best of the situation where you've got the ability to go and sell out a venue that you might not have been able to. And while people kind of know, it still looks good, and you still build attention, and it helps with then, you know, pushing into getting, whether it's an agent for the first time or to interest managers and all these kind of things. So I think for most artists, there's a few that are kind of like needing the huge capacities because they've got a big operation and big expenses. But for the bulk of artists, it's actually kind of an opportunity to, to achieve those key things early, which is kind of like, selling out shows and generating some momentum, getting people to pay attention. So I'm mostly seeing that as a positive for you know, for the bulk of artists who are kind of still in those earlier stages. And then as far as timeline goes, I think you've just got to factor in a few of the key logistical things, like, you know, we're trying to put a Marlin tour together right now. He's got one in New Zealand. We're trying to put an Australian run together for May, and we're just running into like pure logistical issues, like the recital centre could only have 150 capacity, and we can't really put on the show selling 150 tickets when it's not even like you know, for him that's kind of not a huge room, so it's like that just doesn't work. And so we're kind of like, okay, we're going to have to sort of wait, announce this not aligned with his record, and it's a bit of a pain. But you just kind of go, okay, well, I guess we'll get it sorted in January, and we'll remind people about the album, and it might extend out the campaign a bit more and kind of give us another chance to talk about the record's success in December, in January. And so you can kind of just like find ways to make it positive, but you do want to kind of think about those core logistical things, and not just if you've got a plan to release in April and the venues don't yet have kind of a clear outline of capacities, and you don't have enough information to kind of do a good announce of the tour and the first single or the tour and the second single, yeah, you might want to push back the album another 2 months and just go, okay, maybe I just need a little more time. The country needs a bit more time to just figure things out, and I'm just going to like play to my strengths. And then hopefully by the time things are announced, you do your touring, things are like almost kind of in a more sort of normalized situation, and you're able to kind of, you know, have every element of a release in play. Whereas in 2020, so many people have had to do releases without touring, some without record stores being open, and without being able to get vinyl and all these things. And it has killed some releases in a pretty tough way by really strong artists. And I think next year in Australia at least, you've got a chance to maybe not be hurt by any of these factors, and it could just be, yeah, go back 2 months or adjust a little bit and just be aware of the rules and the changes and stay on top of it and be smart about it. And you might find that you actually get a pretty clear lane to do your thing in the middle of the year.
Oops. Well said, Al. I guess one thing this year has also done is, and whilst we all know that it's a thing, to really expose the business model of artist management and how people make money, and live income is such a crucial part of the pot, so to speak. It's been a lot of discussion within the industry, Big Sound Conference, other dialogue amongst management community about, high-end articles about Spotify and streaming royalties. But yeah, a discussion around developing income streams, like how, it was Benny, you talked about, wanting to, develop your country act in venues, but if they're restricted, how are you going to make money to sustain and invest that back into your art? What are some other ways that managers are starting to talk about building the income stream? Is it an opportunity to? I'd love to hear.
Yeah, we did 3 pretty good deals actually for Vera Blue. We did Gucci, Yves Saint Laurent, and we're about to announce one with Weller, which is a hair company. With Polish Club, we just did a massive activation with Destination New South Wales. So we actively went out there and chased things, knowing the sponsorship while it was still us, and we still continue to do, to this day. But that kind of helped us, keep the doors open this year.
Yeah.
It really did.
Yeah.
So endorsement sponsorship, obviously, as I just said, you need the right profile at the right time, and you have the right music potentially. But I think that's an area that's only going to get bigger, as we go into this, post-COVID world. So that's what we're focusing on. Merchandising's been quite, I wouldn't say lucrative, but we've seen an increase in merch sales for our artists as well, because people can't spend it on anything else. They can't go out. So, we dropped a few. You know, we did a new range of Polish Club T-shirts, and we did with some new vinyl, and it went pretty quickly. You know, if they can't buy the ticket, you know, or they'll buy the record or the new T-shirt design. So there's ways to supplement it. Don't get me wrong; it's not going to, you know, it's not going to sustain itself forever. But it's not. You know, there are options. You know,
Amy,
thinking outside the square, outside of touring.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Amy, what about yourself and the way you've approached this year?
Yeah, I think merchandising has definitely been something that my artists have been able to develop, mainly because some of them haven't had new music coming out. So having that merch stream has been really helpful. So just making sure that it's something that's obviously in line with what your brand is. Outside of that, I've been lucky enough to be working with one of my artists is in New Zealand, so they've been able to do shows and stuff like that. So that's been really handy for me. But as generally speaking, it's mostly been the merch side of things because they don't yet have the profile for the sponsorships as yet, and publishing as well.
Al, you're repping some pretty fly merch there. What's been, I guess you've had possibly a bit more time to think outwardly about your own business and your artist businesses in lieu of being able to tour. And I am speculating, of course, there's probably been rerouting and all that kind of going on. But with respect to any sort of like new ventures, like Michael was saying about endorsements and sponsorship, have you had any ways to build income streams for your artists? New ways of thinking?
I think we haven't got into those areas too much because none of my artists want to do that. And so it's been an opportunity to try some things that have been on the back burner. Like there's been some film composing, some a little more kind of like a few kind of sync projects, and then just prepping new ideas and sort of starting new projects. And there's been a lot of stuff that we've sort of done some of the groundwork that'll come to the fore in the next year or two. I think there's an element here where we've got to be a bit real about especially if you don't have an existing profile. This year for many people has kind of sucked and kind of been impossible. And if you were earning some money playing some shows, but streaming, you know, if you're not streaming a lot, is just barely anything. Like, it's a pretty shitty situation, and that is very real, and just there's no two ways about it. But I think in the hope that that things are improving and most of those kind of income streams are coming back, I think it's just been a year where it's a chance to kind of create more songs, you know, work on more projects, prep more stuff, and be ready for when things come back. And I think while it's super tough, and some people would have dropped out of the kind of creative industries this year because it has been so hard, I think it's a test of, you know, how committed anyone is to wanting to have a life in this. And there's been ways to kind of look at it positively, get through, kind of build, work more creatively, try some new avenues, and then when things ease back, be able to kind of like do it better than ever before. So, you know, I think there's ways to look at it positively, but I guess I just don't want to pretend like for some artists there's any avenues this year. For some it's just like, it's just closed the door, and it's more about kind of pulling back, working on life and your creative side, and then being ready to go and do things, have a clearer vision when you come back to it and when things are opening up again. And I think that's a pretty positive thing.
For your family, or getting better at your
story
art?
Of this, that's been the story of this year, is mostly just a rejuvenating year for mental health for all of my roster, and especially for myself. And, you know, it's been a pretty brutal few years prior, with traveling like sometimes up to 60% of the time. And so that's been the real win, you know, is just
taking stock.
And taking stock. And that's been the case for everyone on the roster in a massive way, especially for artists like Julia and Marlon, who are touring so much. that's a different kind of a win than the business side, but it's going to help them with a long career. So
sure. Well, that kind of wraps up. We're about 5 minutes away from ending. I'm not sure if the panel can be generous enough just to give maybe a couple more minutes outside of 6 o'clock, just because we started a little bit late, just to ensure we had bulk people. But I'd love to throw to the audience to see if there's any kind of burning questions out there that we can answer on your behalf. Put up your hand. No questions? Can't see.
Surely. Desmond, what are you?
Anna, I think I saw Anna put up her hand.
Hey, yeah, thanks. I just was going to ask about if you have any advice on accessing some of that like third-party feedback that you were talking about, getting some real kind of feedback. I sort of feel like a lot of the people around me don't necessarily tell me, like, give good critiques of what I'm doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I'm kind of the king of like going to coffees and then walking away with a huge amount of anxiety that the person hates me now, and I keep doing it, just because I don't know, like it's just how I am, that I want to like sort of be real about things, but it's but yeah, it does. The tricky thing is that sometimes it feels great and people really get something out of it, and sometimes it goes terribly wrong, and you just go like, why would I ever do that again? Like, like I don't want to like ruin someone's day. And often it's not because you're being blanket negative. You're just kind of going like, just having some real talk, and it's maybe not what someone's familiar with. So I think personally, like, there's people out there that are willing to kind of have those chats. It's difficult because it's somewhat subjective, but I think if you've got an attitude of like, hit me with it, and like you can really like, face that stuff and find a place for it without necessarily kind of being completely defeated by anything negative, then for me, I would be willing to kind of do that. Whereas if it just is like, how could you, and fuck you at the end of it, then you're just like, oh, I'm not going to do that again. Like, so I think it's hard to find people that are willing to like really lay it out, but I'm certainly someone who has done that a lot. And when people have a good attitude about it, I think that we get somewhere in those chats, So, yeah.
Michael, Amy, anything else to add to that?
I'm just trying to work out, was the question was how do you get third-party feedback, or was it, I'm just trying to work that.
That's correct, yeah.
How do you get third-party feedback?
Yeah.
Send your music to everybody. Send your music to Unearthed, send your music to journalists, send your music to, if you get one response, you've been successful. With negative or positive, just getting a response is important for young artists. So I would encourage everyone who's serious about having a long-term recording career to send their music to as many outlets as they can. There's no guarantee in terms of callback or maybe a response sometimes, but you just never know. One person may hear some gold, and all of a sudden the game changes for you. Mm-hmm. Send it out. When I was back in the day when I was doing A&R, I would get literally 100 CDs a week when CDs were actually were relevant, and we had a team listening to them just in case there was something we may have missed. So I encourage you to send music, all of you, to send music to as many people as possible, friends, family. Unearthed, media, journalists that you know of, street papers, even though they're online now. Just send it to as many people as you possibly can. Get it out there. Someone may bite.
I still think there's a bit of a difference between like that process and finding trusted sources where,
of course,
where like you really kind of lean on this person, and that they're going to hit you with that really honest feedback. And like Phoebe Bridgers talked about it in an interview I watched yesterday, where she's got a little crowd of people she sends songs to whenever she writes them, and they give her like the thumbs up or the thumbs down. And you know, she has created that group of people that she trusts and she knows they're not going to bullshit.
And that's all about the community that she's built around her, which is a bit of a common theme in the discussion today. So, and I reckon that would be a great place to start, is start building out that. It could be 20 people on this call now that you tap into.
Yeah. And if you're in the industry and you're good at what you do, you will give honest feedback.
Yeah, so it might be musicians that you admire, or it might even be your peers. But I just think also, like I was saying, like sometimes it can be brutal. So you've got to be prepared for that. But then also they might say something that you completely disagree with, and it helps you test your own theories as well. So be open to take it on board, but also be open to kick back and be like, no, actually that's confirmed the way I feel.
Yeah, and that's what I love, is saying to someone like, you know, one of my artists, like, I'm not sure about that song, and then they're like, no, I back it, and they release it, and I kind of have to suck it up, and sometimes I change my mind, you know, and it's like, that's cool, you know, someone has to be strong enough to say like, okay, cool, but I'm backing this. And so but likewise, if they're angry at me because deep down they know it sucks as well, you know, that I'm not so sure about. Like that sometimes happens where it's like, they're really annoyed at me, but it's normally because they're like, oh, right. Like,
yeah, they're actually annoyed at themselves because they know
pride
the truth.
to swallow. Yeah, for sure.
Totally.
Yeah.
You love it. When you know it's good yourself and someone else says it's not, I reckon you're just like, cool, I love this, you know?
Back it. Yeah. Has anyone else got questions? We've probably got a couple more minutes to go.
I guess I would just like to ask, so I'm someone who tries to balance music with work and other things that I have to do. So where some other people have had a lot more time this year, I've probably had less time. So I'm just wondering, with the limited time, or if you're time poor and trying to do everything so that you don't burn out, what do you recommend trying to focus on? Because I guess if I try and do it all, like play a lot and record and everything, then I find that I just get really tired. So yeah, just wanting your view on that.
Thanks, Christy. Anyone want to shoot?
I know it's
We're all jumping in now.
I like it.
I'll go. I would say definitely focus on your craft first, and then focus on what you're good at, and then decide what you can outsource from that point. So that way you're not it's not an uphill battle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that you should just like work out the hours you've got and favor it strongly toward your allocation strongly towards the creative, and then just set, if you've got limited support to release and stuff, set quite like realistic expectations for it. And then if that support increases because you're getting some traction, then you can just start like lifting your goals and what you're working towards. But yeah, it's with limited time, I think basically the music has to be even stronger. You know, the more time you got to work on the touring side and your, you know, socials and all these things, the more you can kind of build something on top of the music. And if you've got limited time, then sometimes, you know, just puts more of an emphasis on the music needing to do its work on its own. And that's, so it's possible. I know plenty of people with limited time and have to kind of like, they can't tour that much and they only release ever so often, but if the music's great, they still have really like strong kind of careers that I love their careers. You know, they're really a great mix of things, and I love their life setup, and you know, it's definitely possible to make it work.
Yeah, and I'm kind of going to echo what Al said. I mean, I think it's important that, you know, if you can't, you know, physically and mentally, you know, do both things. I mean, like all my artists, like every artist I pretty much signed had a day job when I signed them, you know, and it took a while for them to, you know, to be sustainable. I think, you know, in the situation that you're in, I think it's important that you just focus on music and making sure that's fantastic, because you can't do a full-time job and tour. You just can't. It just doesn't
Yeah.
work that way. You're either fully in or you're fully out. So if that's your predicament, and it's a lot of artists' predicament, then the music is the most important aspect of what you're doing right now. Touring, that doesn't mean anything unless you've got great music, unless you've got an audience. So start with that.
Well, a lot of people
Focus.
a lot of people do figure out those kind of flexible job situation. I've found a lot of artists kind of find that boss that supports their career and gives them a bit of flexibility that most people wouldn't have of, and they find a way to make it work where the door's a bit more open to take opportunities, and then they gradually work towards, as more come up, they gradually like lower the level of work and taking over with music. So I've seen some clever like setups where people kind of, they choose a job that's intentionally like aligned with the weird kind of career that is music and having to kind of jump on things quickly. So, I've seen lots of people make it work in really creative ways.
I don't know, in a post-COVID world, if people are still going to be that keen on live streams or whether it's going to be a flash in the pan solution to what was. But, I think it has opened the eyes to connecting more and an opportunity to maybe, if you are busy doing both, working on your online audience and building that up step by step. Doesn't need to be a big ambitious plan, but do some live streams and get some feedback and redress that as an outlet to perform and get better. But it doesn't take you away from you can do that outside work hours without too many resources.
Thank you.
Anyone, we've got time for one more question. Yes, Stephen. Oh, and we'll go Stephen and Carol if that's okay with the panel.
Quick question. Thank you, firstly, for all your insights and your time. Do you, as artist managers, like being approached by artists? And if so, how do you like being approached by artists? Given there's no one dropping 100 CDs off in Michael's office.
I love that.
How do I like being approached? Send good music to us online. Show us your social media presence. Show us, just show us something. For me, it's I like discovering music, and whether it's online or whether it's going to, believe it or not, going to a record store to buy some vinyl and speaking to the guy behind the counter. Just put out good music. It'll be found if it's good, essentially. Without sounding too arrogant about it, but yet, if you're great at what you do, you'll be found. Your music will be discovered. Whatever means possible. That's my take on it. It's really simple.
Yeah, I'm with Michael. I always love hearing new music. I think, you might be looking for a manager and you contact a manager and they listen to your music. It might not come through to you being signed to that manager, but it's just extending that network, and you never know what opportunity might come up and they might email you about something. So I think it's just an opening that doorway. So by all means, you may not get a response from them because obviously managers are very busy, but don't, I guess, let that dishearten you, because it is being heard by someone and someone will respond at some point.
Absolutely, they will.
Yeah, I think like patient persistence is kind of my preferred spot to sit, and I think keep emails brief, make them personalized, 100%. I'll just delete stuff if it doesn't look like it's written to me, and I can spot like a spammy email a mile away, and so it's just personalized brief, like you're talking to another person, because you are, and just send like one YouTube link or one SoundCloud link. Don't attach stuff. Just make it really simple for the other person and assume that they're time poor. And following up maybe once works all right, and probably twice might be overload if it's a cold call. I think that's probably the spot.
Excellent, thank you.
And my preference would be somewhere in that vein too. I'm looking at Jackie Sania here, who's sent me some music, and we do get caught out. Sometimes we've just been so busy, but patient persistence. Feel free to kind of follow up if I promise that I will indeed listen to your music. So, absolutely. What's that?
Get up and call them out.
I'm calling myself out in this. in this I'd like to extend very, yeah, thank you so much to the panel for your time today. Some great. Oh, sorry, Carol. Yes, my apologies.
There's one more.
And Carol and whoever Carol's with as well. You're on mute at the moment.
Hi.
Hey, Carol.
I'm a self-managed artist. I work from home. I have 6 children. I'm a single parent, so my job is to be at home with my kids. I have my studio set up. I've recently put in for grants from Music Victoria. Waiting on that. I just received an email. There's an extension happening, but patiently waiting. My question would be, as an artist, I have come out as a hip hop artist at the moment, but my passion's in my country and my cultural aspects of music. And I don't know what the term is, but like, what would I put myself out there as if I was to come out with country or modern, hip hop or modern day music. And yeah, I've just started focusing a lot on my investment of myself. Like, I've gone and bought a MIDI and I've got a set of drums and I'm setting up my studio for, hopefully I'll get this funding and go through courses, but just managing myself and, what sort of bases would I cover? I've got, advertising, and I don't really need publishing. Like, I just need the advice on where my next step would be.
Can I ask a question, Carol?
Yep.
How many songs have you written?
At least 10.
Right. Write 100 more.
I've got plenty of lyrics. Yeah, it's just I don't know. Like, I've got instruments.
And that's not being facetious. I think you got to just keep writing and keep writing and keep writing, because you know what? 10 songs. If I talk to a young artist and they tell me they've only written 10 songs, or any artist for that matter,
I've written more than 10. I have 10 songs made that I've done myself. So.
I reckon keep the creative thing going. Get creative, keep going, and write as many songs as possible, and then start to get them out there. 10 songs does not, grant you a career or grant you, easy access to anything right now. I think you got to be really strong and firm and believe in yourself. And just keep writing. That's my recommendation.
Thanks.
And not having hit a note, mind you, it could be amazing.
And off the back of the chat that we just had off Stephen's question, send us some music and send us a link, dot points. We're here on this panel today because we care about independent musicians and trying to help you navigate that path. So if we have time, we'll come back to you and give you some feedback.
Absolutely, I'd love to give you feedback. If you send it to me, I'll give you feedback. But just keep writing. Keep writing and keep writing.
I just try and create a country song, and I end up with hip hop and like just rhyming all the time. And I try and sit down with a guitar, and I just
keep experimenting. Keep going. And you're balancing 6 kids, so it's so I get it. But yeah, just keep developing. Keep writing, regardless of genre.
Yeah,
Carol, I think just get to the spot that you can kind of articulate what and lean into your strengths. If it's some sort of blend of those genres, and that's what keeps coming out, and if it's taking shape for you and you're like, this is making sense, and I can I can see how this presents to the world, then cool, you're in a good spot to put it out to the world. But I think you need to work out and feel like you can see what you're presenting for the world to then kind of like, take it on board. I guess it needs to sort of get into that spot where you found your sound.
Yeah, that's a good point, Al.
I'm doing a music production course now, so sort of in the middle of everything.
Keep going, Carol. Keep writing and writing and writing and writing.
And just get back to that, finding out what your vision is and setting those goals, so that can help determine which direction you're going to go in.
Yep.
Nice circular way to kind of close off. Thank you, Carol. Please
you.
Give a warm applause to our fabulous panel today. All your insights. Throw up a little emoji, clap. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Al. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Music Victoria, for putting this fabulous program together. I hope it's been extremely useful for you guys, and make sure you have a bit of a break over the New Year's too. Come back fresh 2021.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
Good luck, everyone.
Good luck with
Take
your
care.
music.
Take care.